Let me ask you something honest. Is there a version of your life, a better one, that you've been putting off? A version where you're more disciplined, more focused, more fulfilled? A version that feels possible but somehow keeps staying just out of reach? If the answer is yes, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not stuck. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't as mysterious as it feels. It's not about talent, it's not about luck, it's not about waiting for the right moment to finally show up. That gap is shaped by something far more within your control: your choices, your habits, your standards, and the courage to honestly look at the patterns you've been repeating. Leveling up isn't a motivational slogan, it's a process, a real one, built on internal shifts that eventually show up in your external results. In this audiobook, we're going to walk through that process together, practically, honestly, and without the fluff. You'll discover why identity has to come before action, why discipline outlasts motivation every single time, how your environment is quietly shaping your behavior, and how shifting to long-term thinking can completely rewire the direction of your life. This isn't reserved for gifted people or lucky people. This is a sequence of steps available to anyone willing to commit. Transformation takes time, but it begins the moment you decide to stop living on autopilot and start living by design. So let's begin. Chapter 1. Choose the future version of you. Before you change anything in your life, you must decide who you want to become, not what you want to own, not what you want to achieve, not what you want to show the world. Who you want to be at the level of identity, because identity drives behavior, and behavior drives results. You cannot level up while still being loyal to an outdated version of yourself. And yet, many people try. They chase new goals with old habits, new ambitions with old standards, new dreams with old identities. It doesn't work. You can't upgrade your life while staying committed to the person who created the life you're trying to upgrade from. The future version of you must be chosen first. Everything else follows. Choosing that future version is not just imagination, it's strategic. Ask yourself, who is the person I must become for my goals to feel normal, not extraordinary, normal? Picture that version. How do they think? What do they tolerate? What do they no longer tolerate? What time do they wake up? How do they speak to themselves? How do they handle frustration? How do they react to setbacks? How do they show up when no one is watching? These are not abstract questions. These are identity questions, and identity questions reveal the blueprint for change. When you choose a future identity, you give your life direction. Without direction, every habit is accidental. Every decision is reactive. You end up negotiating with your old self over and over again. That old self will always try to keep you comfortable, predictable, and safe. But safe doesn't mean satisfied. Comfortable doesn't mean fulfilled. Predictable doesn't mean alive. There comes a moment when you must choose growth over familiarity. That moment is usually uncomfortable, and that's how you know it matters. Now here's the key. Choosing a future version of yourself is not the same as fantasizing about a perfect life. It's about committing to a different standard. Standards are powerful because they do not negotiate. Your future self has different standards than your current self. A future self who values discipline wakes up even when they don't feel like it. A future self who values health says no even when cravings say yes. A future self who values ambition keeps learning even when results are slow. When you choose that person, you stop asking, "How do I feel today?" and start asking, "What would the future version of me do today?" That single shift can transform an entire life. And here's something people rarely think about. Once you choose the future version of you, your environment, your habits, and your relationships begin to self-sort. Some habits won't survive, some patterns won't survive, and some relationships won't survive. Growth demands a cost, and that cost is usually comfort, but the rewards are enormous. Confidence increases because confidence is the byproduct of alignment. Satisfaction increases because satisfaction is the result of living on purpose. Life becomes clearer because decisions get easier when identity is chosen. Choosing who you want to become is a serious declaration. It is a contract with your future, but it is also liberating. You don't have to remain bound to history. You don't have to keep repeating what you have already outgrown. You don't have to wait for permission. Your transformation begins when you say, "I'm not staying here," and mean it. Leveling up starts with identity. Everything else, habits, discipline, systems, routines, will come in later chapters. But this is the foundation. You cannot build a new life on the blueprint of the old one. Choose the future version of you, and then let every action, every day, every decision start moving toward that identity. That is how transformation begins. Chapter 2. Refuse the life you're tolerating. Every transformation begins with refusal. Before you can level up, you must reach a point where the life you're currently living is no longer acceptable. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in a quiet, deeply honest way. In the beginning, leveling up is less about chasing something new and more about refusing to keep settling for less. You must stop tolerating what drains you, what numbs you, what holds you back, and what keeps you playing small. Change rarely begins with desire. Change begins with discontent. When the pain of staying the same becomes heavier than the discomfort of growth, the shift begins. Most people tolerate more than they admit. They tolerate habits they know are destroying their confidence. They tolerate environments that keep them stagnant. They tolerate relationships that don't challenge them to rise. They tolerate excuses that make them feel temporarily safe, but permanently stuck. And they tolerate stories about who they are that were written by someone who hasn't lived a single day as their future self. Toleration is subtle. It hides underneath phrases like, "It's not that bad," or "Maybe later," or "This is just how I am." But nothing keeps a person trapped more effectively than a life that is not that bad. Not that bad is the enemy of much better. To refuse the life you're tolerating, you must first recognize what you're tolerating. That requires honesty. And honesty is uncomfortable because honesty exposes where you're selling yourself short. Ask yourself, what am I currently putting up with that I would never tell someone I care about to accept? That question is powerful because we often advise others at a higher level than we live ourselves. If a friend told you they were stuck in a job that kills their enthusiasm, you'd tell them to explore better options. If they told you they were surrounded by people who make growth impossible, you'd tell them to upgrade their environment. If they told you they abandoned their dreams because they were afraid of judgment, you'd tell them those dreams matter. But when it comes to ourselves, we rationalize instead of advise. Refusal is an act of self-respect. It's saying, I deserve a life that matches my potential, not just my patterns. It doesn't mean you hate your current life. It means you're no longer willing to live beneath your capacity. That shift in attitude creates a new internal standard. Personal standards are the invisible forces that shape destiny. You will never consistently outperform your standards. You might get lucky for a moment, but luck fades. Standards remain. When you refuse mediocrity, you lift your standard. And lifting your standard changes the questions you ask. You stop asking, can I make this work? And start asking, is this even worth my time? Refusal also breaks inertia. Inertia is the tendency to keep living today the same way you lived yesterday, simply because yesterday is familiar. Familiarity is comfortable, but it is also a trap. A stagnant life doesn't always feel painful. It often feels acceptable, and that's the danger. The life you're tolerating won't collapse. It will slowly suffocate your potential. That's why transformation requires tension. You must create enough internal friction to disrupt autopilot. Refusing the life you're tolerating does not instantly create a better life. It creates space for a better life. When you stop tolerating draining relationships, you create space for supportive ones. When you stop tolerating lazy routines, you create space for disciplined habits. When you stop tolerating excuses, you create space for accountability. Growth is less about adding and more about removing. Remove what weakens you, and what strengthens you will have room to grow.
Now let's talk about the courage factor. Refusal takes courage because it introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty scares the part of your mind that wants predictability, but predictability and progress rarely live together. To level up, you must learn to live in the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. That tension is uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is the sign you're moving. There is a moment in everyone's journey where they decide consciously or subconsciously, I'm not living like this anymore. That moment is sacred. It marks the beginning of transformation. Some feel it after hitting a low point. Others feel it after recognizing they've been coasting for years. For some, it comes quietly in the middle of an ordinary day. It doesn't matter how it arrives. What matters is what you do once it does. Refusal by itself won't level up your life, but without refusal, nothing will. You cannot build a new chapter if you're still committed to the old one. You cannot create a new identity if you're still protecting your old limitations. And you cannot create a better life until you stop justifying the one that's keeping you small. At some point, settling has to become more uncomfortable than growing. When that happens, the transformation begins. Chapter 3. Audit what's feeding your mind and behavior. Every life is built on inputs. What you consume mentally, emotionally, socially, and even digitally feeds the patterns that shape your behavior. And behavior shapes destiny. If you want to level up, you don't start with the outcome. You start with the input stream. You start by asking, what is feeding me? And more importantly, is it feeding the version of me I'm trying to become, or the version I'm trying to outgrow? This sounds simple, but it's transformative. Most people never audit their inputs. They assume their thoughts are self-generated, but most thoughts are absorbed. They assume their beliefs are chosen, but most beliefs are inherited. When you don't audit your inputs, you become an accidental product of your environment instead of an intentional architect of your future. Let's break this down. Your mind is always being conditioned by something. Conversations, media, habits, the people you interact with, the content you consume, even the questions you ask yourself. They all reinforce identity and expectation. When you consume negative, low-quality inputs, you get negative, low-quality outputs. When you consume high-quality, empowering inputs, you get high-quality, empowering outputs. You cannot binge chaos and expect clarity. You cannot consume distraction all day and then demand focus on command. You cannot absorb pessimism and then attempt to take bold action. The inputs don't match the output you're asking for. This is why the most successful people in any field are often extremely intentional about what they allow into their minds. They understand that information is not neutral. Information shapes belief. Belief shapes action, and action shapes results. And here's the part that surprises many people. The mind doesn't just learn from what you pay attention to, it learns from what you repeatedly tolerate. If your habitual inputs normalize procrastination, complaints, cynicism, or escapism, your brain learns that as the baseline. But if your inputs normalize ambition, learning, discipline, and possibility, your brain adjusts upward. The baseline matters. Now consider the role of your digital inputs.
We live in a time where attention is a currency and everything is designed to steal it. Endless scrolling is not harmless. It rewires your dopamine system, it shortens your attention span, and it makes delayed gratification feel unbearable. And delayed gratification is where every meaningful reward in life exists. When you audit your digital diet, ask yourself, is this training me to consume or training me to create? Consumers watch life, creators shape life. There's a major difference. If you want to level up, spend more time in creation mode than consumption mode. Then there are the social inputs, your conversations and relationships. The people you talk to most feed you constantly. They feed you ideas, they feed you beliefs, they feed you emotional cues. Energy is contagious, confidence is contagious, ambition is contagious, but so are fear, excuses, and complacency. If your environment normalizes low standards, you will have to fight twice as hard to raise your own. But if your environment normalizes growth, you won't have to explain why you want more out of life. You'll be understood, you'll be supported, you'll be challenged. That matters, especially over the long term. And then we have narrative inputs, what you tell yourself about yourself. Self-talk is a constant input stream. If you speak to yourself in a way that restricts your potential, no amount of external motivation will overcome that internal ceiling. Auditing your inner dialogue is one of the most practical and life-changing steps you can take. Notice what your mind repeats. Notice which thoughts are automatic. Notice what stories you're rehearsing. You don't have to hold on to thoughts that no longer serve you. You don't have to keep repeating stories that were written during worst chapters of your life. Once you begin auditing your inputs, you'll have an important realization. Some of the things feeding you are actively weakening you. They make you more distracted, more doubtful, more passive, more reactive, more fragile. And some of the things feeding you make you stronger, more curious, more focused, more disciplined, more strategic, more courageous. Growth becomes a matter of replacing one category with the other. That's the beauty of it. You don't need a perfect plan to level up. Sometimes you just need to stop feeding your weaknesses and start feeding your strengths. This chapter is a reminder that your day is constantly training you. Every input is a teacher, every habit is a tutor, every conversation is a lesson. The question is not whether you are being shaped. The question is, who or what is doing the shaping? When you take control of your inputs, you take control of your behavior. When you take control of your behavior, you take control of your life. That's the beginning of intentional transformation. Chapter 4. Interrupt the patterns that keep you average. Every life is built on patterns, patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, patterns of response, patterns of avoidance, patterns of comfort. These patterns operate quietly in the background, and because they are familiar, they go unchallenged. But familiar does not mean beneficial. In fact, most of what keeps a person stuck is not dramatic sabotage, it's ordinary patterns repeated without resistance. If you want to level up your life, you must interrupt the patterns that keep you average. You must break the automatic loops that dictate your choices and limit your potential without you even noticing. Patterns are powerful because they operate below conscious awareness. You don't have to decide to procrastinate. Your brain already knows the sequence. You don't have to decide to check your phone. The pattern executes itself. You don't have to decide to avoid discomfort. The pattern kicks in on schedule. The same goes for overthinking, doubting yourself, running from feedback, starting things but not finishing, chasing short-term dopamine instead of long-term rewards, and choosing comfort over growth. These patterns are not proof that you are broken. They are proof that your brain favors efficiency. Your brain loves repetition because repetition feels safe. But safe doesn't bring you to the next level. Safe keeps you average. To interrupt a pattern, you must first become aware of it. And that awareness usually begins with a simple question: what do I do automatically that works against the person I'm trying to become? Ask it slowly, ask it honestly. You might notice patterns in how you start your mornings, how you handle stress, how you make decisions, how you speak to yourself, or how you avoid the very actions that could move your life forward. Awareness is uncomfortable because it brings responsibility. You can't change what you refuse to see.
Once you see it, the pattern can no longer hide. The next step is disruption. Disruption is when you choose a different action at the point where the old pattern wants to take over. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to be different. If the pattern is procrastination, disruption might look like working for 5 minutes instead of delaying for 5 hours. If the pattern is emotional eating, disruption might look like pausing long enough to ask what you're feeling before reaching for the snack. If the pattern is escaping discomfort, disruption might look like sitting with the discomfort for 60 seconds instead of running from it immediately. These small disruptions matter because they begin rewiring the loop. You're training your brain that new responses are possible. Here's a truth that will serve you for the rest of your life. Your patterns don't need to be destroyed in a single dramatic moment. They need to be weakened through consistent interruption. Every time you break the loop, even for a moment, you plant a seed for a new identity. The future version of you cannot thrive if the current patterns remain unchallenged. Disruption creates space, and in that space, new behaviors can emerge. Now let's address a misconception. Many people believe they lack discipline or motivation, when in reality they are stuck in unchallenged loops. They judge themselves harshly without realizing that patterns are stronger than intentions. You can intend to wake up early, but if the pattern says hit snooze, the pattern wins. You can intend to work on your goals, but if the pattern says scroll for dopamine, the pattern wins. You can intend to pursue growth, but if the pattern says don't risk judgment, the pattern wins. The goal isn't to shame yourself. The goal is to interrupt the sequence so the future self can breathe. Patterns also involve identity. If you believe you are someone who always quits, your patterns will reinforce quitting. If you believe you are someone who thrives under pressure, your patterns will reinforce persistence. Identity and pattern form a loop. Break the loop, and identity begins to shift. Identity and behavior cannot remain misaligned for long. One will change to match the other. There's another layer here: comfort. Comfort is the hidden guardian of old patterns. Comfort convinces you that staying the same is easier, safer, and more predictable. But predictability is a trap. The life you want exists outside the comfortable pattern. That doesn't mean you must suffer. It means you must be willing to sit in temporary discomfort to experience lasting elevation. Most people never make that trade. They choose the discomfort of regret over the discomfort of growth. Regret is quieter, slower, and less obvious, but far more painful. Once you begin interrupting your patterns, something interesting happens. Momentum appears. Momentum doesn't come from motivation, it comes from consistency. And consistency is simply the repetition of pattern disruption in the direction of your future self. It doesn't matter how slow it feels. Forward is forward. Growth compounds. Change compounds. Awareness compounds. And once momentum is on your side, the old patterns lose their power. They may still whisper, but they no longer command. Interrupt the patterns that keep you average, and you will create space for patterns that make you exceptional. The next chapter will show you how to build routines that make success feel natural instead of forced. But none of that matters if the old loops remain unchallenged. Disruption is the first crack in the shell. It's where transformation begins. Chapter 5. Design routines that put you on offense. Once you interrupt the patterns that keep you average,
The next step is to build routines that move you forward, routines that put you on offense instead of defense. Most people live their lives reacting. They wake up reacting to alarms, reacting to messages, reacting to problems, reacting to other people's agendas, reacting to stress, reacting to distractions. A reactive life is a life spent catching up. You can't level up from that position. You level up by designing routines that make progress predictable, not accidental. Progress thrives when life is structured for it. Routines are powerful because they remove negotiation. When you rely on motivation, you have to negotiate with yourself constantly. Should I do it now? Should I wait? Am I in the mood? But when something becomes routine, there is no negotiation. The decision has already been made. That's why people who build strong routines often seem more disciplined than they actually are. It's not discipline doing the heavy lifting, it's design. The routine carries them when motivation doesn't show up. A strong routine accomplishes three things. First, it aligns you with your future identity. Second, it reduces friction between intention and action. Third, it protects your limited cognitive energy by automating what matters. Let's break those down. Alignment means your routines reflect the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. If your future identity involves being healthy, disciplined, and focused, then your routines must reflect that. What you repeatedly do is who you become. There is no escaping that truth. Reducing friction is about making it easier to do what moves you forward and harder to do what holds you back. If you want to read more, keep books visible and remove digital distractions from your environment. If you want to train consistently, place your workout gear where you can't ignore it. These small things matter because friction determines behavior. The brain is biased toward ease. Build routines that make the right choices easier. Protecting cognitive energy is essential because willpower is not infinite. Every day you have a limited amount of decision-making capacity. When everything is a decision, life becomes exhausting. But routines convert decisions into defaults. When breakfast is pre-planned, when training is scheduled, when learning time is blocked, when bedtime is non-negotiable, your mind stops burning energy on what should already be obvious. That energy can then be used for problem-solving, creativity, leadership, or growth. Now let's talk about mornings. You don't need the perfect morning routine, but you do need a strategic one. Mornings are leverage points. They set the mental tone for the day. If your morning begins with chaos, distraction, and reactivity, your day will follow that rhythm. If your morning begins with intention, clarity, and motion, your day expands instead of collapses. A strong morning routine contains three essential components. Something that activates the body, something that focuses the mind, and something that moves your life forward. That could look like training, reading, journaling, planning, or working on your most meaningful project before the world has a chance to interfere. But routines aren't just about mornings. Evenings matter too. Evenings determine recovery, clarity, and tomorrow's momentum. If you stay up scrolling until your mind is overstimulated, your sleep suffers. When your sleep suffers, your discipline suffers. When your discipline suffers, your confidence suffers. Suddenly, you're not leveling up, you're self-sabotaging in slow motion. A strong evening routine doesn't need to be complicated. It simply needs to close the day intentionally. Review, reset, and prepare. Set up tomorrow so tomorrow doesn't start from zero. Here's the deeper truth. Routines are less about efficiency and more about identity. When you repeatedly show up for yourself, you send your brain a signal. I am a person who follows through. That identity shift is priceless. Confidence isn't built by shouting affirmations. It's built by showing up for your commitments. The fastest way to respect yourself is to become someone you can rely on. Not every routine needs to be perfect. In fact, perfection will destroy progress. A routine that is 70% consistent will outperform a routine that is perfect once and abandoned afterward. Consistency compounds. The purpose of designing routines isn't to create a restricted life, it's to create a life where progress becomes normal. A life where momentum is the baseline, not the exception. A life where you don't chase improvement.
You live in a system that produces it.
When you design routines that put you on a fence, life becomes structured for growth. You stop relying on hope. You stop relying on good days. You build a machine that pushes you forward, even when circumstances don't. That's how people level up in the real world, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through intentional routines that accumulate into transformation. Chapter 6. Control the friction between emotion and action. One of the most underestimated aspects of leveling up your life is learning how to manage the space between what you feel and what you do. That space, small as it seems, is where futures are built or destroyed. Emotion is immediate, instinctive, and reactive. Action is chosen, deliberate, and directional. The problem isn't emotion. Emotion is human. The problem is when emotion controls behavior without resistance. When that happens, life becomes impulsive, inconsistent, and fragile. People quit because they feel discouraged. They lash out because they feel provoked. They scroll for hours because they feel bored. They avoid challenges because they feel afraid. They procrastinate because they feel discomfort. The difference between those who level up and those who repeat the same year forever is not that one group feels less. It's that one group learned to control what happens between emotion and action. The friction between emotion and action is where discipline lives. Feelings don't disappear just because you want to succeed. You will feel tired, unmotivated, afraid, frustrated, overwhelmed, annoyed, uncomfortable, and impatient. These emotions don't signal failure, they signal humanity. But if you allow emotions to dictate behavior, you will build your life on temporary states instead of lasting commitments. Imagine if everything you achieved depended on being in the mood. Nothing meaningful would survive. Real growth starts when you stop waiting to feel like it. Here's the truth. You don't need to suppress emotion to succeed. You need to separate it from the actions that matter. You need a buffer, a breath, a pause, a moment where you observe the emotion without obeying it. This is not about denial, it's about ownership. When you delay emotional reactions, especially impulsive ones, you take back control. You give your future self a seat at the table instead of letting your present discomfort run the show. Controlling that friction also means learning to sit with discomfort. Discomfort isn't a sign that you should stop. It's often a sign that you're on the edge of growth. Most people misinterpret discomfort as danger. Their brain says, "This feels uneasy," and they translate it as, "I shouldn't be doing this." But discomfort is the price of every upgrade. It's the toll you pay at the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. Avoid that toll and you stay on the same side. Let's talk about impulsivity. Impulsivity is simply emotion without friction. It's the instinctual response, the knee-jerk reaction, the "I don't want to think, I just want relief" moment. In a world full of instant gratification, this becomes a major trap. A person who needs relief faster than they need results will never hold discipline long enough to win. Victory requires delayed gratification. It requires choosing what you want most over what you want now. This is not easy, but it is worth it. Now consider the opposite scenario. Emotions that stop action instead of provoke action. Fear, doubt, insecurity, and uncertainty often paralyze people before they even begin. They don't fail because the task is impossible. They fail because they never start. They wait for confidence before action, when confidence is actually the reward for action. Action generates evidence. Evidence builds belief, and belief fuels further action. That cycle can't start if emotion blocks the first step. This is why controlling the friction matters so much. You create space to move anyway. Another powerful shift is viewing emotions as signals, not commands. Instead of obeying fear, you examine it. Instead of obeying frustration, you analyze it. Instead of obeying resistance, you question it. Ask yourself, why do I feel this? What is this emotion trying to protect?
Does this emotion move me toward or away from my goals? When you ask questions, you activate the thinking brain. When you obey impulses, you activate the survival brain. Leveling up requires more strategy than survival. There's also the matter of emotional neutrality. You don't need to feel amazing to do what matters. You don't need to be inspired to take action. You simply need to be willing. Neutrality is underrated. Some days the win is not performing at your best. The win is showing up at all. That's how consistency is built, not through intensity, but through repeated neutral actions on ordinary days. Here's the empowering part. The more you practice controlling the friction, the easier it becomes. Emotional resistance weakens, action muscles strengthen, and self-trust grows. Self-trust is one of the greatest rewards of mastering this space. When you prove to yourself that you can act despite how you feel, you become dangerous in the best way. You stop fearing challenge. You stop needing permission. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You become someone who can move, someone who can execute, someone who can win. Emotions are not the enemy. Acting impulsively because of them is. Avoiding action because of them is. Leveling up requires emotional maturity, not emotional silence. When you control the friction between emotion and action, you gain the ability to move your life in the direction you choose, not the direction your moods dictate. That is a level of power most people never reach, not because it's impossible, but because it requires practice. And practice, as always, is the road to mastery. Chapter 7. Reclaim your time from people and distractions. Time is the most valuable asset you will ever have, and most people lose control of it long before they realize it's slipping away. They don't lose it to catastrophes or emergencies. They lose it in small, unnoticed leaks. They lose it to other people's expectations, to meaningless obligations, to digital noise, to conversations that go nowhere, to entertainment that numbs instead of enriches, and to distractions that feel harmless but quietly steal entire years. If you want to level up your life, you must reclaim your time. You must take it back from the things and the people that are not aligned with your future. You cannot transform your life on leftover hours. Time leaks because most people treat it like it's abundant, but act like their goals are rare. They assume there will always be more hours, more days, more seasons, more chances. Then one day they wake up to the realization that the time they thought they had has already been spent on things that didn't matter and people who didn't care. Awareness of time is not about panic, it's about intention. It's about recognizing time as a non-renewable resource and acting accordingly. One of the first steps to reclaiming your time is learning how to say no, not as a rejection, but as a filtering mechanism. Every yes is a commitment of time, energy, and attention. When you say yes to everything, you end up living a life shaped by other people's priorities. You become a passenger in your own story. Saying no is not selfish. It's strategic. It protects what matters. It safeguards your future, and it preserves the energy required to build something meaningful. Another major thief of time is digital distraction. Modern technology has mastered the art of stealing attention. And attention is the doorway through which time escapes. Endless scrolling doesn't just waste hours, it rewires desire. It trains the brain to crave novelty instead of progress, dopamine instead of fulfillment, stimulation instead of growth. But here's the bigger danger. Distraction feels harmless. It feels justified. It feels like just a few minutes. But those minutes accumulate into hours, and those hours accumulate into years, and those years become the difference between a life built with intention and a life consumed in reaction. Reclaiming your time requires reclaiming your attention. Another time trap is people. This doesn't mean people are bad. It means not all people are good for your time. Some relationships feed your growth. Some relationships deplete it. Some conversations expand your thinking. Others drain your energy. Some people challenge you to rise. Others encourage you to stay exactly as you are. And then there are people who don't necessarily harm you. They just waste you. They waste your time with drama, with gossip, with laziness disguised as leisure, with problems they don't actually want to solve. You can care about people without sacrificing your entire life to them. To reclaim your time, you must upgrade your boundaries. Boundaries are how you declare, "My life has direction, and I will not abandon that direction casually." Without boundaries, time is up for grabs. Anyone can take it, any distraction can claim it, any demand can rearrange your day. With boundaries, your time becomes structured, protected, and intentional. And intentional time is productive time, not just in terms of work, but in terms of life. Time for rest, time for learning, time for recovery, time for thinking, time for building. These are all forms of productive use. Another important aspect of reclaiming time is understanding leverage. Leverage means that not all hours are equal. Some hours move you forward dramatically, others barely move you at all. When you spend a high-leverage hour learning, planning, creating, or building skills, you gain returns that compound over time. When you spend low-leverage hours reacting, consuming, or escaping, you gain nothing and often lose momentum. The key is to shift more of your life toward high-leverage activities. Ask yourself regularly, is this moving me forward or just filling space? Now let's address an uncomfortable truth. You cannot reclaim your time without confronting your avoidance patterns. Sometimes people don't lose time because others take it. They lose it because giving it away is easier than facing the discomfort of growth. Avoidance loves distraction. It loves useless busyness. It loves social obligations that feel important but change nothing. Avoidance loves anything that keeps you busy without making you better. When you reclaim your time, you remove the hiding places. You remove the excuses, and that forces progress. Reclaiming time doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness, boundaries, intention, and repetition. When you begin practicing it, you will notice something powerful. Life becomes quieter, not boring, quieter. And in that quiet, clarity appears. You start noticing what matters and what doesn't. You start building instead of reacting. You start investing instead of spending. You start living instead of drifting. Time is not something you manage. It's something you allocate. It's something you spend on purpose. Every hour is a vote for the person you are becoming. Reclaim your time and you reclaim your future. Chapter 8. Rebuild your surroundings for success. Your environment is not just where you live, it's what shapes you. It influences your habits, your mood, your standards, your thoughts, and your behaviors, far more than most people realize. You can want to level up, you can read every book, you can set goals and make plans. But if your environment is engineered for comfort, distraction, and stagnation, you will constantly fight against your surroundings. And when you are forced to fight your environment every day, eventually the environment wins.
Willpower is no match for a world designed to keep you average. That's why leveling up requires an environmental rebuild. Rebuilding your surroundings doesn't necessarily mean moving to a new city or redesigning your home. Although sometimes those things matter, it means intentionally shaping the spaces you spend time in so they support who you're becoming instead of reinforcing who you've been. Every environment has a pull. Some environments pull you forward, others pull you sideways, and some environments pull you backward. The question is, which direction is yours pulling you? Let's start with the most immediate environment, your physical space. Look around the places where you spend the most time. Are they built for focus or for escape? Do they encourage learning or distraction? Do they make it easy to take action or easy to avoid action? A cluttered environment reinforces mental noise. A chaotic environment reinforces chaotic behavior. A passive environment reinforces passive habits. Small adjustments make a big difference. A visible book makes reading easier. A clean desk makes working easier. A preset gym bag makes training easier. The brain seeks the path of least resistance, so make the path of least resistance the one that leads to progress. But environment goes beyond physical space. There's also the digital environment. In today's world, the digital environment often influences you more than the physical one. Your phone is a portable environment. Your apps are environments. Your notifications are environments. And most of them are not designed to help you win. They are designed to capture your attention and monetize your distraction. Rebuilding your digital environment means curating what you see and removing what pulls you off track. Unfollow what drains you, silence what agitates you, delete what wastes you, subscribe to what strengthens you. A single digital adjustment can buy you back hours of mental bandwidth. Then there is the social environment, perhaps the most powerful environment of all. People are contagious, not just their moods, also their expectations, their tolerances, their ambitions, their fears, their excuses, their beliefs, and their standards. Spend enough time with people who normalize complaining, and it will feel natural to complain. Spend enough time with people who normalize discipline, and it will feel natural to be disciplined. Most people don't rise to the level of their goals. They settle to the level of their surroundings. If you're the most driven person in your environment is wrong. This doesn't mean you need to cut out everyone who isn't ambitious. It means you must be intentional about who influences you most. You can care about people without letting them shape your future. You can love people without letting them lower your standards. Rebuilding your environment means reassigning influence, not necessarily removing relationships. Who you allow closest to you is an environmental choice, and that choice compounds over time. There's also the habit environment, the environmental cues that trigger behavior. You're not just a creature of intention, you're a creature of cues. You associate certain places with certain actions. The couch cues comfort, the bed cues sleep, the kitchen cues eating, but you can reassign cues. You can designate spaces for work, spaces for learning, spaces for training, and spaces for rest. When you do this consistently, the environment begins doing the discipline for you. Suddenly, you don't need to convince yourself to work. You just need to enter the space where working happens. That's an environmental win. Sometimes leveling up your environment is uncomfortable because it requires removing the things that made life easy. Comfort isn't always the enemy. Unearned comfort is. And unearned comfort is often built into an environment that expects nothing from you. When you rebuild your surroundings, you introduce friction in the right places. For example, if you want to stop binge watching, don't leave the streaming apps on the home screen. If you want to stop snacking, don't stop the snacks. If you want to write more, keep your tools visible. If you want to train more, make training the simplest available option.
Design beats willpower every time. This chapter is a reminder that your environment is either reinforcing your future or reinforcing your past. You can't become the highest version of yourself while living in an environment built for the lowest version of you. The environment you tolerate becomes the life you live. If your environment demands nothing, don't expect excellence. If your environment demands growth, growth becomes your default. Rebuild your surroundings for success. Make your environment reflect your future, not your history. When your surroundings support who you're becoming, transformation accelerates, not by force, but by design. Chapter 9. Acquire skills that pay you for life. At some point in your journey to level up, motivation will matter less and skill will matter more. Skills create leverage, skills create confidence, skills create options, skills create income, skills create mobility, skills create independence, skills create long-term durability in a world that constantly changes. If you want to transform your life in a lasting way, you must acquire skills that pay you for life. Skills that compound, that travel with you, and that continue to deliver value long after trends fade and circumstances shift. Many people focus on goals like be successful, or make more money, or become fulfilled. But goals without skill are just wishes. Skill bridges the gap between intention and outcome. Skill takes ideas and turns them into execution. Skill makes you valuable, and value is rewarded in every economy and in every era. This is why real transformation requires you to shift from passive consumption to active acquisition. You must become a learner, not just a dreamer. The mistake most people make is assuming skill acquisition ends after school or early adulthood. But the truth is that school teaches you how to learn. Your life teaches you what to learn. And in adulthood, the skills that matter most are rarely taught in formal settings. Skills like communication, resilience, persuasion, creativity, problem-solving, adaptability, emotional management, decision-making, leadership, and strategic thinking. These are not specialized skills. They are foundational skills. They amplify everything you touch. They raise your ceiling. They multiply your potential. Now let's talk about specialized skills, the ones that create leverage in a specific domain. In today's world, specialized skills might include coding, design, marketing, sales, public speaking, copywriting, teaching, negotiating, analyzing data, leading teams, building systems, or understanding finance. These are the kinds of skills that can generate value on demand. The more value you can generate, the more control you gain over your time, your opportunities, and your income. You are no longer dependent on luck. You are no longer waiting for a break. You become the break. Skill acquisition also changes how you see yourself. When you build skill, you build evidence, and evidence builds belief. Many people suffer from low self-esteem not because they lack worth, but because they lack proof. Skill provides proof. When you know you can deliver value, when you know you can solve problems, when you know you can create results, you stop questioning whether you're capable. You stop apologizing for wanting more. You stop shrinking to fit environments that are too small for your potential. Another important truth: skills compound. The first skill is always the hardest because it upgrades your identity from passive to active. Once you learn how to learn, each new skill becomes easier because the process becomes familiar. Skills stack together in unexpected ways. For example, communication plus leadership plus patience equals influence. Design plus psychology plus storytelling equals brand power. Coding plus creativity plus marketing equals scalable business. Skills don't just add, they multiply. This brings us to another principle.
Invest in skills before you invest in outcomes. Outcomes fade, skills endure. You can lose a job, but keep your ability to create value. You can lose a business, but keep your ability to build another. You can lose money, but keep the skill that earned it. The world is unpredictable. Skill gives you stability within that unpredictability.
It's the closest thing to insurance for your future.
But skill acquisition is not passive. It requires deliberate practice. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires repetition. You must be willing to be bad before you become good, and good before you become exceptional. Many people never acquire valuable skills because they fear the beginner stage. They fear looking inexperienced. They fear feeling incompetent. But every master was once embarrassed by their first attempts. The difference is that they kept going to build skills that pay you for life. You must also build a learning strategy. That means choosing what matters most. Not all skills are equal in terms of return. Some skills pay once, others pay forever. Some skills are only useful in specific contexts, others transfer to every domain of life. The key is to prioritize the skills that align with your future identity and the life you're building.
Ask yourself regularly, what skill would make everything else easier or more effective? That question will point you toward leverage. Lastly, remember that skill creates freedom. The more skill you have, the less you depend on favorable circumstances. The more skill you have, the more life responds to you instead of controlling you. Skill is one of the greatest gifts you can give to your future self, because it compounds across decades. When you acquire skills that pay you for life, you stop hoping your life will get better. You gain the ability to make it better, and that is the beginning of real transformation. Chapter 10. Use discipline to carry you when desire won't. There comes a point in every transformation where desire fades. At the beginning, desire is loud. It fuels enthusiasm. It excites the imagination. It pushes you into motion. But desire is temporary. It peaks quickly and disappears just as fast. If you rely on desire alone, your life will be defined by short bursts of effort, followed by long periods of stagnation. That is the default pattern for most people. They start with energy, they fade with time, and they return to comfort. If you want to level up in a meaningful way, you must rely on something stronger than desire. You must rely on discipline. Discipline is not about punishment or harshness. Discipline is the ability to do what matters even when you don't feel like it. It's the ability to act in alignment with your future self instead of your current mood. It's the refusal to negotiate with excuses. Discipline is consistency under less than ideal emotional conditions. And that distinction matters because success is rarely built under ideal emotional conditions. Success is built on ordinary days, tired days, distracted days, stressful days, unmotivated days. Anyone can perform when everything feels easy. The difference between average and exceptional is how you perform when everything feels hard. There's a misconception that disciplined people love discipline. They don't. They love the outcome, not the effort. They love the confidence that consistency produces. They love the dignity of keeping promises to themselves. They love knowing they can rely on their own word. Discipline is not about enjoying the action. It is about valuing the result. Once you understand that, the emotional friction becomes easier to navigate. Discipline also changes your relationship with discomfort. Most people move away from discomfort automatically. Discipline moves toward it intentionally, not because discomfort is pleasant, but because discomfort is the signal that you're pushing beyond your current capacity. Growth requires friction. Without friction, there is no expansion. Think of a muscle. It must be stressed to grow. The same applies to identity, skill, confidence, and capacity.
Discipline is the mechanism that applies that stress in a controlled, consistent way. Another important truth: discipline reduces decision fatigue. When you decide in advance what you will do, when you will do it, and why it matters, you remove the need for emotional negotiation. You take decision-making out of the moment where your feelings are strongest and your standards are weakest. For example, deciding to train at the same time every day removes the need to ask yourself, should I work out today? The answer is pre-decided. The routine handles it. Discipline thrives on pre-commitment. This brings us to an essential framework: action before emotion. Most people wait for the right emotional state before acting, but emotion is unreliable. If you wait for motivation, you will almost always be late. Disciplined individuals do the action first and let the emotion catch up, and often it does. Action creates clarity. Action creates momentum. Action creates emotion. You feel motivated after you start, not before. That's the inversion that changes lives. Another benefit of discipline is that it builds self-respect. People think confidence comes from compliments or achievements, but true confidence comes from evidence. Evidence that you can trust yourself to do what you said you would do. When you break promises to yourself, your self-respect erodes quietly. When you keep those promises, your self-respect compounds. Confidence is not a personality trait, it's a behavioral result. Discipline is how you earn it. Let's talk about the relationship between discipline and identity. A lot of people try to change their habits without changing their identity. They try to force new behavior while still believing they are someone who quits early, procrastinates, or lacks consistency. Discipline challenges that belief. Every repetition of disciplined behavior reinforces a new identity. I am someone who follows through. Once that identity forms, discipline becomes easier. You no longer drag yourself into action. You act because it's who you are. But discipline also requires boundaries. Without clear boundaries, everything becomes optional, and optional actions rarely get done. Boundaries protect discipline from interference. Boundaries protect time, attention, energy, and mental bandwidth. When you set boundaries, you are telling the world and yourself that your future matters enough to defend. Now, there is a temptation to chase perfect discipline, but perfection is unrealistic and unnecessary. The goal is not to perform flawlessly. The goal is to remain consistent. Consistency is the force multiplier. If you show up at 70% effort on days when you don't feel like it, you will outperform the person who shows up at 100% effort only on days when motivation strikes. Discipline is about frequency, not theatrics. Finally, discipline gives you something that desire never can: durability. Desire is a spark. Discipline is the engine. Desire starts the journey. Discipline completes it. The life you want, the future version of you, cannot be reached through occasional bursts. It requires steadfastness. It requires commitment. It requires an ability to execute independent of mood. When you use discipline to carry you when desire won't, you gain the power to finish what you start. And this, more than anything else, is what separates transformation from fantasy. Chapter 11. Upgrade your circle. To upgrade your ambition, the people you surround yourself with influence you more than you realize. They affect how you think, what you aim for, what you tolerate, what you believe is possible, and how you respond when things get difficult. Human beings are social by nature. We adapt to our environment. We match tone, behavior, standards, and expectations, often without noticing the shift. If you want to level up your life, you must upgrade the circle around you. Not because you need better people to feel superior, but because you need an environment that makes ambition normal instead of rare. Everyone has a social thermostat. This thermostat sets the temperature for your expectations. If your circle has low expectations, it becomes very easy for you to settle. If your circle has high expectations, it becomes difficult to remain average. This is why certain groups consistently produce growth. They don't merely encourage ambition, they normalize it. When ambition is normalized, effort becomes a baseline instead of an exception that changes everything. A weak circle nurtures excuses. A strong circle nurtures standards. A weak circle accepts your rationalizations. A strong circle reminds you of your commitments. A weak circle pulls you back into comfort. A strong circle pushes you toward capability. And the most revealing part is this: you don't even need a toxic circle to stay stuck. A comfortable circle will keep you stuck just as effectively. Growth requires friction, challenge, encouragement, accountability, and shared ambition. Comfort rarely offers these things. Now, upgrading your circle doesn't mean abandoning people or becoming cold. It means becoming intentional about influence. You can love people without letting them determine your trajectory. You can remain loyal to relationships without sacrificing your potential to maintain them. The goal is not to eliminate people, it is to rebalance proximity. The people closest to you should support your future, not reinforce your past. There are 3 types of people when it comes to growth: those who pull you forward, those who pull you sideways, and those who pull you backward. Those who pull you forward introduce new ideas, new standards, new possibilities, and new expectations. They challenge you to rise. They hold you accountable. They refuse to let you shrink when pressure hits. Those who pull you sideways keep you busy without moving you. You spend time, but you don't gain progress. The relationship isn't harmful, but it's not constructive either. Then there are those who pull you backward. They reinforce old identities, old behaviors, old excuses. They make evolution feel unnecessary or even uncomfortable. Most people spend the majority of their time with sideways and backward influences. Why? Because sideways and backward relationships are easy. They require no vulnerability, no ambition, no discomfort, no growth. But easy is expensive. Easy costs opportunity. Easy costs momentum. Easy costs aspiration. The right people make growth easier. The wrong people make growth feel impossible. To upgrade your circle, you must first upgrade your criteria. Ask yourself, who are the people that make me think bigger? Who are the people that want more out of life? Who are the people that encourage effort over excuses? Who are the people that speak possibilities instead of limitations? Who are the people who demonstrate the behavior I want, not just talk about it? These are the kinds of people who elevate you, and don't overlook this. Sometimes the people you need are not currently in your life. That's okay. You will meet new people on the path of becoming someone new. Growth attracts growth. Another part of upgrading your circle is removing dead-weight expectations. People often stay small because they fear how others will react to their expansion. They fear judgment. They fear criticism. They fear being called arrogant, selfish, or unrealistic. But here's the truth. The people who benefit from you staying small are rarely the people who benefit from you becoming who you are capable of becoming. If your growth threatens someone, that says more about their insecurities than your ambitions. Upgrading your circle also requires you to become someone worth connecting with. Ambitious people gravitate toward ambitious people. Leaders gravitate toward leaders. Builders gravitate toward builders. If you want to sit at higher tables, you must first raise your own standard of behavior. You must bring value, curiosity, discipline, and integrity. Growth-based relationships are mutual. They are built on respect and contribution, not convenience. This chapter isn't about elitism, it's about stewardship. You are responsible for protecting the environments that shape your mind. You are responsible for choosing influence, instead of drifting into it.
If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, don't be surprised if complaining becomes your language. If you surround yourself with people who constantly compete to stay average, don't be surprised if excellence feels unnecessary. But if you surround yourself with people who chase potential, who build skills, who honor discipline, who value time, who encourage ambition, and who take responsibility for their outcomes, excellence becomes expected. Upgrade your circle and you automatically upgrade your ambition. Because in the right environment, growth isn't something you need to justify, it's something you're reminded to pursue. Chapter 12. Convert failures into strategic adjustments. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process that creates it. Yet most people treat failure as a verdict. They treat it as proof that they aren't capable, aren't worthy, or aren't cut out for what they want. They interpret failure emotionally instead of strategically. When failure is emotional, it becomes heavy, it becomes personal, it becomes final. When failure becomes strategic, it becomes data, it becomes feedback, it becomes a guide. The difference between those who level up and those who stagnate is not that one group fails less, it's that one group knows how to convert failure into adjustments rather than identity. To convert failure, you must first accept that failure is inevitable. There is no path to mastery that avoids it. Every skill, every career, every transformation, every ambition has a failure tax attached to it. You pay the tax up front through mistakes, confusion, frustration, and setbacks. You cannot skip the tax, but you can decide whether you pay it willingly or fearfully. When you accept failure as a cost of entry, you stop seeing it as a sign to quit. But acceptance is just the beginning. After failure occurs, most people respond with judgment instead of curiosity. Judgment asks, "What's wrong with me?" Curiosity asks, "What happened here?" Judgment shrinks your world. Curiosity expands it. Judgment concludes the story. Curiosity continues it. Curiosity is the mindset of someone who is building. Judgment is the mindset of someone who is retreating. The moment you shift from judgment to curiosity, failure transforms from shame into information. Information is powerful, but information alone is not enough. You must extract the right lessons. Not every failure carries the same message. Sometimes failure tells you your skill needs work. Sometimes it tells you your strategy was flawed. Sometimes it tells you your timing was off. Sometimes it tells you your expectations were unrealistic. And sometimes it tells you that you gave up too early. The clarity you gain depends entirely on the questions you ask. Questions like, what part of this was under my control? What would I do differently if I tried again? Where did the process break? What data am I ignoring? These kinds of questions transform failure into advantage. Another key element is speed. When failure isn't processed quickly, it becomes emotional residue. People get stuck replaying their mistakes instead of adapting from them. They become afraid to try again because the memory of discomfort is louder than the memory of progress. Momentum dies, and so does confidence. But when you convert failure quickly, when you extract the lesson, adjust the strategy and re-enter the arena, you maintain momentum. Momentum is more valuable than perfection. Momentum makes improvement cumulative. Without momentum, every attempt feels like you're starting from zero. Now let's address resilience. Resilience is not about enduring endless punishment. It's about adapting faster than failure discourages you. It's the capacity to absorb impact without losing direction. Resilience is built through reps. The more times you fail and adjust, the more evidence you accumulate that failure is not fatal. That evidence changes your relationship with risk. Risk becomes less frightening and more mathematical. You start seeing failure in terms of probability and iteration.
Once you think in iterations, progress becomes predictable. Failure also reveals commitment. Many people love the idea of success, but dislike the process that produces it. They want the reward without the messy learning curve in between. But success demands the learning curve. The learning curve demands mistakes, and mistakes demand patience.
When you are willing to endure the curve, you automatically reduce competition. Most people quit at the first sign of difficulty, others quit at the second, a few quit at the fifth. Almost no one keeps going long enough to convert failure into mastery. If you are willing to stay in the game longer, the field becomes less crowded. But here's a subtle truth. Not all failure is worth continuing from. Part of converting failure is knowing when to pivot. Pivoting is not quitting. Pivoting is course correction. Quitting is abandoning direction without learning. Pivoting is adjusting direction based on learning. Most great careers, businesses, and transformations are built on pivots, not rigid plans. When failure reveals that you're pushing in a direction with diminishing returns, pivoting is the intelligent move. Strategy beats stubbornness. And finally, the emotional side. Failure hurts. There's no point pretending otherwise. It carries embarrassment, disappointment, frustration, even grief. But emotional pain is not a sign to stop. It's evidence of investment. You don't hurt over things you don't care about. The key is to feel the emotion without letting it dictate the conclusion. Feel it, process it, and then translate it. Emotional recovery is part of strategic adjustment. When you convert failures into strategic adjustments, you stop being at war with reality. You collaborate with it. You treat life as a feedback loop instead of a test you are constantly trying to pass. And when life becomes a feedback loop, growth is inevitable. You don't need perfection, you need iteration, you need patience, you need resilience. And above all, you need a willingness to continue. Failure is not the barrier, failure is the bridge. Those who cross it level up. Those who fear it remain where they are. Chapter 13. Do what's hard before you feel ready. There is a myth that stops more people from transforming their lives than almost anything else. The belief that readiness comes before action, that you must feel confident before you pursue the next level, that you must feel certain before you take risks, that you must feel qualified before you enter the arena. But in reality, readiness rarely comes first. Action comes first. Confidence comes later. The people who level up are not the ones who waited to feel ready. They are the ones who moved while still uncertain, still inexperienced, still intimidated, still afraid. They did what was hard before they felt prepared, and that decision changed the trajectory of their lives. Doing what's hard before you feel ready builds capacity. Capacity is what allows you to take on bigger challenges, bigger opportunities, and bigger responsibilities. Many people want bigger opportunities, but they want them with the comfort level of their current capacity. That's not how growth works. Life tests you upstream. It gives you small versions of the challenges you'll eventually need to handle at a larger scale. If you avoid the small challenges because they feel uncomfortable, you never graduate to the bigger ones. You stay stuck at the level where everything feels doable, but nothing feels meaningful. Now here's the truth. Doing what's hard doesn't mean recklessness. It means expansion. It means stepping into discomfort with intention. It means choosing challenge over stagnation. It means letting your future self lead rather than your present self protect. And most importantly, it means showing up despite the internal voice that insists you aren't ready. That voice will always be there. The voice doesn't disappear as you grow. It just moves farther away from the driver's seat. Every major transformation in life begins with doing something that feels premature. Starting a business before you fully understand business.
calling yourself a writer before anyone reads your work, training before you're in shape, speaking before you're articulate, leading before you're confident. You don't become ready through thinking, you become ready through doing. Action trains the brain, action teaches skills, action builds familiarity, action reduces fear. Nothing substitutes for it. Fear is a major barrier here, not dramatic fear but quiet fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of failure, fear of wasting time, fear of being misunderstood. These fears don't shout, they whisper excuses like, maybe later, let me prepare more, the timing isn't right, I need to learn a bit more, or I don't want to get it wrong. Those phrases sound rational, but they are fear disguised as logic. The perfect time never arrives. The perfect moment never presents itself. Waiting for certainty is the fastest way to waste your potential. There's also the trap of over-preparation. Preparation is valuable, but only up to a point. Beyond that point, preparation becomes delay. Delay becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes stagnation, and stagnation becomes identity. Soon, it's not just that you aren't doing the hard thing, you've become someone who doesn't do hard things. That's a dangerous shift, because once identity forms, it becomes harder to break. When you force yourself to do what's hard before you feel ready, you collect a different kind of evidence. Evidence that you are capable, evidence that you can learn, evidence that you can adapt, evidence that you can figure things out in motion. Most of the confidence people chase is actually the result of earned evidence. Confidence is not a gift, it's a receipt. It is proof that you have survived difficulty. It is proof that you acted without guarantees. It is proof that you are the kind of person who moves. Doing what's hard also accelerates learning. When you enter environments that stretch you, you are forced to grow faster. Real learning doesn't happen in comfort. Comfort protects what you already know. Growth requires challenge, mistakes, feedback, recalibration, and iteration. When you step into difficulty early, you give yourself more cycles. More cycles mean more adaptation. More adaptation means more mastery. You will notice something else when you start doing what's hard. Fear shrinks. Not because the world changes, but because your tolerance expands. Things that once felt intimidating become normal. Things that once felt impossible become routine. That is how leveling up works. It doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger. And once you become stronger, the hard things you feared become the baseline from which you operate. Another important distinction: you don't have to feel confident to take action. You only need to feel committed. Confidence is emotional. Commitment is directional. Confidence asks, do I feel like I can? Commitment asks, is this important enough to act on regardless? Commitment carries you until confidence catches up and creates confidence. That sequence, commitment, arts, actioned, confidence, is how transformation unfolds in the real world. Finally, understand that most breakthroughs are on the other side of early discomfort. Many people spend their lives waiting for the discomfort to disappear before they begin, not realizing the discomfort disappears because they begin. The path doesn't get easier until you enter it. The fear doesn't shrink until you confront it. The uncertainty doesn't fade until you experiment. Movement creates clarity. Waiting creates confusion. Doing what's hard before you feel ready is not just a tactic, it's a philosophy. It's a way of approaching life that puts growth ahead of comfort, progress ahead of perfection, and action ahead of hesitation. It's how you escape the loop of preparation without execution. It's how you build a life that expands instead of contracts. Level up by moving sooner than you think you should. The future version of you is waiting on that first step. Chapter 14. Live by values that hold up under pressure.
At the beginning of any transformation, it's easy to set goals, make plans, and imagine a better future. But what sustains transformation is not goals, it's values. Goals determine what you want, values determine how you act, and the moment life applies pressure, values reveal themselves. Anyone can claim discipline when they're motivated. Anyone can claim integrity when it's convenient. Anyone can claim ambition when the path is smooth. But the values that define your life are the ones you uphold when it's difficult, inconvenient, or unglamorous. The values that survive pressure are the values that shape your future. Values act as internal guardrails. They guide decision-making. When distractions show up, when temptations appear, when opportunities look attractive but misaligned, and when emotions push you toward impulsive choices. Without values, you drift. With values, you navigate.
And if you don't define your values, the world will define them for you through trends, opinions, and the expectations of others. That's how people end up pursuing paths that impress others but don't fulfill them. To live by values, you must first define them, not the vague, polished values that look good on posters. Real values, values that cost something, values that require sacrifice, values that ask you to choose between comfort and alignment. A value like discipline means waking up when you'd rather sleep in. A value like honesty means telling the truth, even when the lie would be easier. A value like growth means doing the uncomfortable thing instead of the familiar one. A value like accountability means owning mistakes instead of defending them. Real values demand action, but values also require prioritization. You cannot live by 20 values at once. If everything is important, nothing is. Clarity comes from ranking. Which values will define your behavior? Which values matter enough to protect? Which values belong to the future identity you're building? For many people, the answers include discipline, integrity, responsibility, curiosity, humility, courage, respect, and growth. But the list is less important than the commitment. A value that is declared but not lived is just a slogan. Pressure reveals authenticity. It shows who you are. When the room is empty and no one is clapping, when the results are slow and doubt creeps in, when the path is unclear and failure appears repeatedly, values are powerful because they offer stability. When emotions are unstable, you can feel afraid and still act courageously. If courage is a value, you can feel tired and still show up. If discipline is a value, you can feel frustrated and still learn. If growth is a value, values give you a blueprint for action that does not depend on emotional weather. Living by values also protects you from shortcuts. In a world obsessed with speed, shortcuts often appear tempting, but shortcuts rarely build character, and character determines how long you can hold success once you achieve it. Many people reach the top of something only to crumble under the weight of what they built. Not because they were unskilled, but because they lacked values that could sustain the position. Skill gets you in the room. Values determine whether you stay there. Values also influence relationships. The people you connect with deeply are not bonded by hobbies or convenience. They're bonded through shared values. When you surround yourself with people who share your values, you gain alignment, accountability, and momentum. When you surround yourself with people who violate your values, you experience stress, confusion, and conflict. The right values attract the right people, and the right people reinforce the right standards. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of values is how they shape identity. Identity is not built through affirmations alone. It's built through repeated decisions that align with values. If you act with discipline repeatedly, you become disciplined. If you act with courage repeatedly, you become courageous. If you act with integrity repeatedly, you become trustworthy. Identity is the accumulation of lived values. However, values must evolve as you evolve. A value that served you during survival mode may not serve you during growth mode. A value that helped you avoid risk may need to be replaced by a value that embraces it. Transformation requires re-evaluating what you stand for and what you are no longer willing to tolerate. A new chapter often demands new values or deeper commitment to existing ones. Living by values that hold up under pressure is not about perfection, it's about alignment. You will fail at your own values. Sometimes you will fall short, make mistakes, and act out of emotion instead of principle. That doesn't disqualify you. What matters is returning to alignment. Real values are not something you have, they are something you practice. At the highest level, values give you something rare, a life you respect, not a life others envy, not a life that impresses strangers, a life you respect privately without applause. That is the foundation of durable transformation. When you live by values that hold up under pressure, the future becomes something you build intentionally instead of something you stumble into accidentally. Chapter 15. Play for decades, not days. One of the biggest shifts you must make if you want to truly level up is learning to think in decades instead of days. Most people collapse their entire life into short timelines. They want results this week. They want validation right now. They want progress immediately. But meaningful transformation rarely operates on short-term cycles. Growth takes time. Skills take time. Mastery takes time. And the best results are reserved for those who are willing to stay the course long after the excitement fades and long after the world stops clapping. Short-term thinking creates frantic behavior, constantly starting over, constantly switching strategies, constantly chasing novelty, constantly abandoning progress because results didn't arrive fast enough. This creates a life filled with motion but lacking direction. You feel busy, you feel tired, you feel overwhelmed, but you don't feel fulfilled or accomplished. Short-term thinking demands intensity. Long-term thinking demands consistency. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. When you play for decades, you stop needing to win every day. You don't collapse emotionally when things take longer than expected. You don't feel defeated when you're still learning in year one. You understand that mastery is built through cycles. You understand that seeds need time to grow. You understand that what feels slow in the moment often feels fast in hindsight. When you zoom out far enough, the struggles shrink and the patterns emerge. There's another advantage to long-term thinking. It lowers emotional volatility. When you only think in days or weeks, every setback feels catastrophic. Every delay feels like failure. Every mistake feels final. But when you think in decades, mistakes become data points, setbacks become chapters, and failures become adjustments. You begin to treat your life like a long project instead of a short test. That shift alone increases resilience. Long-term thinking also changes how you invest in yourself. When you play for days, you seek hacks, shortcuts, and tricks. When you play for decades, you seek skills, character, and systems. Hacks fade when the environment changes. Skills survive every environment. Shortcuts fall apart when pressure increases. Character holds under pressure. Tricks stop working when novelty disappears. Systems work every time. When you play for decades, you invest in things that retain value. Another critical element is patience, but not the passive kind. Not wait and hope, not sit and believe. Long-term patience is active. It means working while waiting. It means improving while the results are quiet. It means preparing while the world isn't noticing. Most people struggle with patience because they confuse it with inactivity. But anyone who has ever mastered something knows that silence is often where the real work happens. When you commit to a decades-long lens, you also start choosing the hard things now, so the easy things arrive later. Most people do the opposite. They choose the easy things now and pay for those choices later with interest. It's easy to avoid discomfort now, but the bill comes due in regret. It's easy to avoid learning now, but the bill comes due in limitation. It's easy to avoid discipline now, but the bill comes due in instability. Long-term players accept the discomfort up front so they can enjoy the freedom later. But here's the important nuance. Playing for decades does not mean delaying all rewards. It means structuring your behavior so rewards continue to appear over time rather than all at once. Think of it like compounding interest. At first, progress feels invisible, then it becomes noticeable, then it becomes undeniable, then it becomes exponential. Compounding is always quiet in the beginning. That's why so many people give up before it activates.
They quit in the silent phase. Long-term thinking also affects your identity. When you play for days, identity becomes fragile. You need results to feel valid. You need applause to feel momentum. You need momentum to feel confident. But when you play for decades, you separate identity from immediate outcomes. You can lose temporarily without losing yourself. You can struggle without abandoning your future. You can endure slow seasons without rewriting your story. The long-term player doesn't quit because the long-term player isn't keeping score on day 3. And perhaps the most liberating part of all, longevity removes comparison. When you play for decades, you stop comparing your Chapter 2 to someone else's Chapter 12. Outro. You've reached the end of this blueprint, but understand something clearly. The end of this audio is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of it. Everything you've heard across these 15 chapters points to a single truth. Transformation is available to you, not to a better version of someone else, not to people with more resources, more talent, or more time, to you as you are, right now. But availability means nothing without action. The gap between knowing and becoming is crossed only one way, through daily, deliberate, unglamorous effort. Through the morning when you don't feel like it, through the decision you make when no one is watching, through the standard you hold when comfort is screaming louder than purpose. You now understand that identity must come before behavior, that your environment shapes you more than willpower ever will, that discipline is not a personality trait, it's a practice, that failure is not a verdict, it's a data point, and that the version of you capable of an extraordinary life is not waiting to be discovered, it's waiting to be built. The most important question you can ask yourself right now is not what do I want? It's who am I willing to become to have it? Because wanting is passive, becoming is active, and the world responds to action, not to intention. Start where you are, use what you have. Don't wait for the right conditions, the right timing, or the right feeling. Those things are traps. The right time is always the present moment, imperfect, uncertain, and full of possibility. One pattern, one routine, one value, one honest decision. That's all it takes to begin the shift. And here is what I want you to carry with you beyond this audio. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too far gone. Every single day is a new opportunity to choose differently, act deliberately, and move one step closer to the version of yourself that your potential demands. The blueprint is in your hands. The decision is yours to make. Stop tolerating the gap between who you are and who you know you can become. Level up, not someday. Not when conditions improve, not when you feel ready. Now. The future version of you is not a dream, it is a direction. Start moving.